began unearthing a large object that we think is the roof of a structure that goes down really far. This is the real deal, and we're looking at one of the biggest finds in the past century.
The crew will be remembered for the greatest archaeological find possibly ever.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
There it is, gentlemen.
Still feel like shit, eh?
Yeah.
You've been feeling progressively worse throughout the week?
Yeah.
Someone was sneaking around the outpost last night.
I don't know, maybe it was an animal.
For Christ's sake, that was no animal.
When was the last time you slept?
I'm not sure.
You're hallucinating.
He's here, now, listening, watching. He's watching me. Jensen, I can't move without him watching me. I can't move.
Calm down.
Hello and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast with Kathy, Mark, and Burke, talking about movies, horror, sci-fi, unusual, unknown, forgotten, underappreciated, always interesting. And today we have a special guest.
Yes, we're excited to have director, film auteur, who has directed two films, Black Mountainside and Archons, Nick Szostakiwskyj. Nick, welcome aboard. Welcome to Cinemondo. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, we all are fans of your films. We saw them recently, and it's great for me to sort of discover a new filmmaker, especially one in the horror genre. And these are two very smart films. I mean, I'll just start off. I don't know if you want to talk about Black Mountainside first or Archons, if you have a preference chronologically, or, you know.
Why don't we start with, let's start with Black Mountainside.
Okay.
Oh,
If you care.
yeah, no, that's,
Well, I want to hear too, just about how you got started in filmmaking. I always like to start with like how people get started and how they got in there, because it's not easy to get films made. So I'd like to see how you started.
that's for
Yeah, I mean that's hard. That's a tough one because like going back till I was 13 years old, I was trying to make crappy movies, right, with a camcorder that is, you know, now the iPhone is like 1,000 times better than that. And then like even when I was 17, I made like a $0 budget feature that never got released widely, and that was a comedy. And we made that with a camera, a DVX camera, which now again an iPhone is better than that. So, but yeah, it was just, you know, as a teenager, I think the same thing with a lot of filmmakers is you just want to make movies and you just do whatever you can to make them, and they get better and better and better as you go. And for me, I think my main goal before used to be I wanted to be a screenwriter. So I would write tons and tons of screenplays. And then the idea of having other people make them just lost my interest, especially when I started kind of making screenplays for buddies and they would try to make them. And I was like, no, I don't like what you did with that. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. It's just kind of an interest that I've always had.
Did you go to film school at all, or did you just sort of learn on your own?
So yeah, after I made that $0 budget film, I decided to go to film school to learn how to do it properly. I went to Vancouver Film School. Yeah. So I moved out west, and
Right.
that was a year course. And yeah, and that's actually where I met a lot of the people that I made Black Mountainside and Archons with, was in film school.
So in your film school, because this is the question I get. I've tried to write scripts and I did a short film. So it's just, how do you go from like, okay, I've written a bunch of screenplays, I want to shoot this feature, not a short, but a feature. You know, how do I, how did you get the funding for it? How did you sort of pull the people together and actually make Black Mountainside, you know?
So that's a great question. I mean, for me, it's always just been like, I'm a big, like, go big or go home kind of person. So when someone comes to me and they say let's make a short film, I'm like, no, that's not, you know, that's not what I'm interested in, unless it's like to test a camera out or something. But Yeah, it's just, you know, very ambitious, wrote the screenplay. I had no resources at that point when I wrote the screenplay other than like friends who also went to film school. And the original plan was to just take like a buddy's camera, like just a DSLR camera, and we would go find some actors who were willing to do it for free, and we were just gonna do it really on the cheap. And then as we started kind of getting into it, we wrote the script. A few more people got interested. We started toying around with the idea of, well, what if we had like 30 grand? Like we could, you know, pay a small crew. It could be a lot bigger than what we originally envisioned. So we started doing that, trying to like find 30 grand or so. And then it just kind of, it grew and grew and grew until it became what Black Mountainside is, which is not a lot more than 30 grand, but I mean, yeah, it's a lot more than $0. That's for sure.
It looks expensive. It
It
looks
does.
beautiful. There's nothing about it that I thought was like, oh, this is cheesy. You know how you spot something in a movie, like bad audio or something. It had everything. It had all the things.
Yeah, no, and that's totally. I mean, what we were going for is coming out of film school is you have a lot of very ambitious people. Like my roommate at the time was like a sound like recorder. He still is a sound. He does field sound recording, and you just get a lot of these people who want to show their best. And we were all like young and ambitious when we made it. So, but yeah, that's like one of the biggest compliments we've ever gotten to is we took the film to Santa Monica for the American film market back in 2014, I think. And we met with distributors, and like one question they always ask is like, oh, what was the budget for the film? And we never really told anyone what the budget was because we didn't want to let on that it was so cheap. But we had people guessing. They're like, oh, it was like a $1.5 million budget. That's what like people were guessing. It's like, no, not even, not even. And not to mention it's with our like Canadian dollary dues too. I mean,
Yeah, it's impressive that you did that feature with those effects and just, you know, beautiful cinematography. I think your partner there, Cameron Tremblay, really, the movie looks wonderful. I mean, it's just, it has that feel of like the setting of, you know, being out there in the Canadian Rockies. I mean, you sense you're out in the middle of nowhere. That great feeling of isolation is so important. And sometimes films don't get that right, you know, and you did.
Yeah, so tell us about. Oh, sorry. I just want to. People were talking about it.
Cameron. So.
Oh yeah, please plug Cameron before you answer my question.
I was just going to say Cameron's great, and I mean, you give him a beautiful Canadian landscape, and that's, you know, that's all he needs. But yeah, sorry, go on.
We made full use of it.
Be a movie that's not set in the, you know, in either, you know, LA or Los Angeles as most films are. It's like, you know, okay, this is a different location, and you get that feeling, like Mark said, of isolation. And, you know, this isn't, you know, the back lot at Warner Brothers. This is real. They're like, you get the impression that these guys are really out there, and they evidently are, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we wanted to do everything on location. I mean, we ended up doing it like, I think it was 2 days in a studio to pick up a couple scenes. But aside from that, we're all on location. I mean, that location is where we slept, and that's where we ate, and that's where we lived. And we had no days off when we did the shoot. It was 11 straight days, no breaks. So, and yeah, those rooms that you see the guys living in the film is where they lived. So
nice.
That's, you know, I was thinking that
actual interiors of the buildings of your exteriors, interiors and exteriors.
When I was watching it, I loved how it felt lived in. Because it, you know, sometimes you see films, you see people in environments, and you know they're actors on a set, and they're in there and they're doing it, but it had a very lived-in look, and that's what made it feel really authentic, like the camaraderie and just how it felt. You know, just it felt that warm, lived-in feel. I wanted you to just describe the movie, you know, what it's about, what your basic thoughts were about it, so people know what we're talking about.
Just so describe like the plot of the movie.
Yeah, the plot and what your thinking was as you came up with the basic overall concept.
Well, okay. So the plot of the movie is about a group of archaeologists who uncover a structure in northern Canada that shouldn't be there based on the carbon dating of the structure. So they bring in a professor from the University of Toronto, and he's gonna kind of assess whether this deserves to have funding or not. And after he arrives, strange things start to happen around the camp. Not to go into too many spoilers, but people start to kind of question their sanity, and the audience questions, hopefully, whether or not, you know, they're going insane or what is happening. And yeah, so that's the main plot of the film. And that was the main idea that we had going into it. And sorry, you wanted to know kind of like how it developed from an idea standpoint?
Yeah, like what would is it? Because I got the feeling it almost had sort of an environmental, sort of mystical feel to it. I don't know if that was the intention, but I got the very, a very like people in this beautiful natural environment were kind of, sullying it in a way. And I'm not sure if that's what your intention was, but I think that's why I felt like it cut a little deeper than some films in that kind of concept.
Oh, okay. So I've heard that before too. That's always interesting when I hear that. I mean, I'm not to like rain on that parade, but definitely we weren't going for like an environmentalist sort of thing. I mean, I'm from Calgary. You're not going to get too many environmentalist movies out of Calgary, but no, it's good. I've seen that one a few times, and that's one of my things is I'm always open to people interpreting the movie however they want to interpret it, and I don't think there's any like wrong interpretation. I mean, that's why the movie is a little bit ambiguous. I mean, that's not even really a spoiler. I wouldn't say that's all over. If you look up the movie, that's every review points it out that it's an ambiguous movie. So, and the reason we do that for Black Mountainside and Archons even a little bit is that we like to have people kind of come up with interpretations. And I think it's the kind of movie we wanted to make originally when we sat down and said, let's make a feature film, is the kind of movies we loved, like The Shining or Eyes Wide Shut, like two really good Kubrick movies, is you watch the movie and afterwards there's room for discussion. Yeah. So you can you can talk to your friends, you can talk about theories, you can try to figure out what happened, you can rewatch it, you can look for clues. I mean, that's the kind of movie that we like. We're not really too into the everything's packaged in a night, like, okay, this nice package and it's like, this is what happened and okay, that's great. We like the idea of a movie being more like I don't want to say like a puzzle, but something that there's some satisfaction in digging a little bit deeper.
Yeah. If you want, perfect for podcast discussions, certainly, but also just, I love movies where you say, I want to see that again, because maybe I'm going to look at it from a different angle. And, we've talked about like Hereditary is a movie you can watch multiple times because it goes different ways. And same with both of your films. They are like, you go back, oh, this is why the character might have, behaved like that in that scene. The first time you're just watching the story, the second time you're saying, okay, I'm trying to figure out based on the ending what really is happening. And both of your films do that.
We talked about that with Archons, and we had a discussion. It's like, oh, what was your interpretation of so-and-so? I don't want to spoil that one because that's a really fun film to take that journey down that river with them, not knowing what you're going to find. The first time you watch it, it's like, what the hell is happening? But then when you watch it again, like Mark was saying, you watch it again, you kind of know some sub stories and it's even creepier,
Yeah, it was, I feel like Black Mountainside felt a little more linear, like I feel like I understood it. and then the end, you kind of go, oh, it could be like, my interpretation wasn't necessarily right, but it's something you can read into however you want. But I liked the dynamic of, we have an all male cast, like The Thing. It reminded me a lot of The Thing. It's like it's sort of this isolation. You're trapped in the snowy, icy area. It's a bunch of guys who look like they've been doing this a long time, and they're very set in their ways and how they're going to do it. They seem like they know each other really well, and I liked that where you take that relationship and it starts kind of turning inside out in a way. Like people start kind of exposing kind of some of their weaknesses or their inherent sort of fears that sort of start getting worse and worse, and they can't, like, are we going crazy? What's happening? And these are guys that are like not the type who would be like, in touch with their feelings really. So I really loved the way that escalated. It was really well done, I thought.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah. I mean, yeah,
that moment, it's like when people start bothering you because they're just messing with something on the table,
That was great.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go, Nick. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say a little like Easter egg too about that scene you're referring to there, where he's playing with the artifact on the table. Someone else was asking about it recently, and they pointed out they were like, oh, well, like in that scene, because he went back and watched Black Mountainside after watching Archons, and he said during that scene he like mentions the plane crash, and then he was like, in Archons there's a mention of a plane crash at the end too, and he was like, is there any sort of connection there? And I don't know if you guys picked up on that either.
I did. Now
Yeah.
I saw Archons
Yeah.
before Black Mountainside, so it was sort of like reverse. But I definitely said, well, this is kind of the same area somewhere in the British Columbia,
Yeah.
the Canadian Rockies. So I definitely said there's some sort of connection between the two,
Felt like
locations.
there was a similar same kind of forces happening. I'm thinking that some of the triggering elements of one film may have existed in the other film too, as some sort of a thing that happens to people.
Yeah, I mean, we
It's
tried
like
to make it almost like a little bit of a universe, a little bit, but like
Yeah.
kind of a loosely connected sort of thing.
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to do stuff like that too. I think it makes, like I said, when you're trying to make like a puzzle,
Yeah.
it makes it more fun for the audience to find. There's even more for them to figure out now, and a reason to go watch both movies too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, before we go on to Archons, I did want to mention two things. First, there are a lot of Easter eggs in Black Mountainside, especially if you're a fan of the thing. At least I was like, oh my gosh, that's a correlation, that's a connection. But also, I think your direction in the movie is really good, because I knew that campsite really well. Like there's that great scene where you're following at the end the guy with the Childs with the gun, and you really know where he's going. Like he's going into this building, then he's going to go down the path and go into this building. That was extremely well done. I was like, I know exactly where he's going. I love that. I need that in a movie. If I don't sense the spatial feeling of a place, I'm completely out. I don't care about the action anymore. So
we kind of borrowed that that, if you've seen the movie Elephant by Gus Van Sant, I think does that one. So that one, it's the same similar sort of thing. We kind of borrowed his style there, where he does those really long like following shots that kind of go through the whole area, and it really gives the audience this like spatial recognition.
Yeah.
If you understand the geography of your
Yeah.
place that your characters are in, you understand how far a thing is away from where they are, and it helps you understand the drama of getting from A to B. The blocking. When somebody walks from here to here, where they are, and it's an element of storytelling that I think not enough directors really understand, placing people in an understandable geography.
Yeah, and it was really important to us too to do that, to make sure that it felt like the audience is there, that the audience arrives with the professor in the helicopter at the start of the movie. We learn the camp as he learns the camp. I mean, that's one of the reasons the film has no score either, is because we wanted it to almost feel like you're standing, when they're like standing around and talking, we wanted it to feel like you're standing there with them, and you're in this room with them, and you exactly, and where everything is in the room, and when there's a noise, like, oh, that could be over there, that could be over there, right? We didn't want it to just be. I mean, you'll notice also in the film there's not a lot of any close-ups. I think there's one close-up.
That's true.
It's all wide, so I mean, you see everything. There's no like blurry depth of field. It's all, you see everything all the time. So
That's true.
In the room.
Yeah. And I think that's something like the feeling it, like, the environment is, I think it's one of those subconscious things that most viewers probably wouldn't really notice, but then when it's there, you feel very comfortable in knowing exactly where everybody is and not. And I think it's sort of an unappreciated little facet to filmmaking that a lot of people don't really recognize at the time, but they appreciate later.
Yeah, well, hopefully most of them anyways.
So Archons.
That was I like that one. I like both of them, but that one to me was sort of like, I get the impression that music people or are a music people yourself. Because I played in bands for many, many years. And whenever I see a movie that's supposed to be about people in bands, it's always phony and stupid,
Yeah.
But this one, I felt like these actors, understood. Maybe they're musicians, or they understood. They knew how to hold a guitar.
Yeah, they are musicians, and I mean, I also am a musician. I mean, I've been staring at your Ricky in your background there, and
he's showing off.
Yeah, No, I mean, I played in a band for quite a while too, after I moved out to Vancouver. A couple of years anyways, but yeah, definitely. I mean, that I wanted to write something that, I understood. I didn't want to write a movie about accountants.
Right.
So yeah, music is something that I know about. And yeah, Rob Racco, who plays Eric in the film, he's a drummer in a band that was touring quite a bit. I think he's in a different band now, with AJ Kappa from Riverdale. They're in a band together. But he owns a drum store, and they make custom drums. So he's actually like a bona fide musician, and he can play the guitar quite well. And then Josh Collins, who plays Mitch, also a guitar player. I don't believe he's ever been in a band, but he's not bad, and he sings. And he did like a little Kurt Cobain thing too before he did Hammer of the Gods too, where he played Kurt Cobain. I don't know if it was like a Lifetime thing or what it was, but
He's got the look. I mean, you could tell that he would pull off Kurt Cobain with a little, makeup.
Yeah. And I think that's why when he came into the audition is why he had long hair, is because he was just coming off of doing that, because he doesn't normally have like the long hair. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to definitely cast guys who could actually play on screen. We didn't want to have to, whenever there was scenes where they're playing, have to like just be on their face and then have a hand double strumming the guitar.
The classic.
Just the way they talk about music in general, the way they discuss the band, and the way those discussions that every band has, and the way you talk about the band and the way you relate to the other band members. It's like a weird, freaky marriage,
Yeah.
And but then aside from that, it's also, you take that and the very realistic relationships between the characters, and you throw them on a mysterious, never-ending river journey into strangeness, and these events that you cannot come back from, type of thing, deliverance stuff. And that to me is great. We all talk about on this podcast a lot. We talk about isolation horror, and the idea of that's where so much drama comes from, is putting making your characters believable, describing, having those moments, those brief moments that define this character beautifully in a short amount of time. Put those people in a situation, and you're just sitting there like, I can't stand this. It's like, what's going to happen? Something horrible happens to someone, and and it's like this, without any spoilers, but it also, in addition to having the sort of deliverance vibe, or not really, but it's a river, that's the only connection, you also get this added strangeness of the outside force that is this triggering substance that you add to it. And it's just a great strange adventure down this river into mystery.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, it was a fun film to make. It was definitely a fun film to write. I mean, it was even like before we filmed Black Mountainside, it was actually a screenplay that I'd written before Black Mountainside. That we went back and did quite a few rewrites, just because I came a long way, I think, as a writer, and I figured I could make it better. But yeah, I mean, like, music has always been there for me. Isolation horror that's my favorite as well. I mean, if you can't tell from the two films I made. But yeah, it just like those have always been like really big things for me. And Archons was like one of my first horror screenplays that I ever wrote. Maybe actually, to come to think of it, it might have actually been the first horror screenplay I ever wrote. But it changed dramatically into the future draft. So I don't know if you could even call it the same script technically. I don't know. It depends on how you classify it. But
the same general idea. I mean, it's hard to talk about what happens in the film without giving away some major things that we shouldn't give away. So you should watch the film. But
it's given away enough to make people want to watch it. If you like those, we're talking about the style and everything, but yeah, it's the kind of film that you can't talk about too much. You can't go too far into a discussion about it without giving away too much. You really want, the first time you see it, you want to not know where they're going, what's happening, what's going to happen. and what the hell, it's like, oh no.
Well,
now
I mean,
now we're here.
I think one way you can describe it is just like how it opens, which I think is cool because it has an emotional kind of layer that that you're not expecting. Like it starts with these people camping, and then this guy comes up in his canoe, and he's a famous rock person, and the girl recognizes him. So you get a little bit of that posturing, like, oh, he's a famous rock star, and that's so cool. And then some of the band joins them, and they're all kind of hanging out with these girls that they had encountered. And so in your mind, you're kind of trying to project like what's going to happen. It just seems so odd to see rock stars in the woods camping. It just seemed wrong, right? And then I loved how they listened to the radio. And I think this isn't even a spoiler. I think it's a way to sort of a way in is that they've kind of had their day. It feels a little like, and then they're kind of humiliated in front of these women that the radio announcer is sort of talking about how they aren't really relevant anymore in a way. So then there's this sort of sadness that kind of happens. I thought that was such a cool way to kind of throw you off where it might go, because so many times you see musicians in films and they're the swagger and they're the rock stars. And like Berg said, it feels really phony. That moment felt so like there's so real, because I feel like inside a musical dynamic, there's all the emotions, like you said, there's the marriage, there's the pressure of fame, there's like, what's going to happen with, is our next record going to make it, the insecurity of it all that you never really see on camera very often. So I really appreciate that, because it sort of was like, wah, wah, after they were like, look at how cool we are. So I thought that was amazing.
I mean, we definitely try to like avoid, or like I try to avoid when I'm writing, like falling into stereotypes too much. And I mean, when you get into like a movie about rock stars, it's pretty easy to fall for the stereotype trap, especially with a horror film. But yeah, I mean, I grew up like with my dad was a musician, like he was a bass player. He played like in a touring band. They played with Iron Maiden. So like I knew rock stars I knew like musicians. They like Jan Arden would come over and stuff like that. So I knew these like musicians in my life. So like I knew kind of like more like how they were in reality. And then obviously I started actually playing music and playing in bands. So like many bands, and some that wanted to hit it really hard, some that like, the kind of bands that just want to like play music. And then you see all these different personality types, like the Mitch character, like he's just this kind of laid back. He just wants to play. He doesn't care.
And I loved him.
If they're famous, he doesn't care if they're like nobodies. And then you have like these Eric types who are just like, if they're not hitting all the marks, if they're not in the spotlight, there's something wrong, right? And I know these people in real life, so a lot of these characters to me are based on real people. I mean, no one person in particular, but they're all based on things I know about real people. So
yeah, it felt inside, like it felt like we knew these people from inside instead of how we imagine they are from the outside, which I really liked. So do you consider yourself a horror director? Do you consider yourself a horror person? Because you said your first horror script, like you've been writing other kinds of genres. Like, will your next film, will it be another horror film or?
So the next film, someone else asked me this recently too. I'm going to call it a horror film. It's a horror film to me. It's written, and we're producing it. But I think there's going to be people who are upset that we call it a horror film, like the purists, the genre purists. It's definitely a genre film. I would call it. I mean, some people are going to be like, it's an action movie. I mean, we're budgeting like $3,000 just for blank ammunition, just to give you an idea. But to me, it's a horror film. I mean, a horror film to me is like tension. It has to do with the atmosphere, the tension. Not so much monsters, right? I mean, some people are like, like if it's not ghosts or vampires or monsters, it's not a horror film, right?
Right.
So, right. I mean, to me, it's more about the tension. It's more about, like, to me, a lot of thrillers are horror films. I mean, The Gift, the 2015 film, The Gift, like to me, that's a horror movie. I mean, it's got like, it's got the cues, it's got the score, it's got the atmosphere, it's got the tension.
Yeah. The sense of menace.
Yeah, exactly. To me, it's a horror movie. But a lot of people will say, no, that's not a horror film. So, my next film, I would call it a horror film. But originally I did like, I mentioned that was my first horror screenplay. Before that, I wrote probably like half a dozen like comedy features. Because my original goal was to go into comedy, but I kind of like I don't know if I lost interest in it so much. Just comedy is just so difficult to do, especially from like producing and marketing and distribution. I mean, with a horror film, you can make a film with people no one's seen before, like actors no one's seen before.
Right.
And people will eat it up, right?
Yeah.
But if you make a comedy film with a bunch of guys no one's ever seen before, who's going to watch it? No one's going to watch it, right?
Our fans will watch anything, including me. But I do think it's interesting how both of your films are like out in the wilderness, like this beautiful wilderness. And that's been like both of your films. One was the winter wilderness, one was more summer. But I love that you drop down horror movies inside these incredible environments. So I love that unexpectedness of that, because you're like, one of the characters even in Black Mountainside said, I love it here. I don't mind staying here. And you're thinking, yeah, it seems so beautiful. I'd like to stay there too. And as the movie goes on, you're like, get me the hell out of this place.
Yeah.
But I like that too, how you'll take that beauty and then make it ominous. And I think that's a really cool, sort of unexpected kind of twist on the horror film. It doesn't have to be a scary house. It doesn't have to be in always at night or, anything like that. It can be in a beautiful place too. And that's what was fun about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it helps that like I spend a lot of time out. I mean, when you're in Canada, you can't go drive half an hour without being in the middle of like the wilderness. So I mean, I spend a ton of time out. I mean, I have 4 dogs, so they have to go walk somewhere. So yeah, we go out into the woods all the time, and that's I mean, anyone who's ever like been out in the forest when it's like dark outside and they're alone.
Yeah.
It gets scary fast.
Yeah.
It gets scary fast. A lot of people don't know that because a lot of people haven't been outside. Like I'm talking to people, a lot of people have never gone like camping and like out in the wilderness, right?
Yep.
So I mean,
Yep.
No, it's glamorous, romantic. Oh, camping and go out, and then you realize that the sun goes down at 5:30, and then you really just want to hunker down by the campfire and not go 10 feet away from the campfire, because then you're like, there's people, there's animals out there, there's stuff out there.
And even in Archons, like some of the scariest stuff was out in this broad daylight and this beautiful canoe trip on on this water, and all of a sudden this horrific stuff is happening, and you're like, wait, I'm not ready.
I've been camping out in the desert before where, there's nowhere for a monster to hide, and you just at night. I remember one time out in the Bureau of Land Management, we went out there to watch the meteor shower, and we were just in the middle of the desert and made camp, and I just wandered in a little bit into the desert. I felt like just, cross the yard, and looking up at the sky and all that. And then I turned around and walked back towards where the camp was. And I felt like I was walking a lot farther than I had walked out. And I kept walking and walking. And then I started feeling like, where is the camp? It was a weird feeling because I knew it had to be within this. I wasn't taking a long walk. It was just a little walk, but it was a little walk into this absolute darkness.
The unfamiliar
featurelessness. I eventually found I survived.
Yeah, because you're alive now.
You're alive.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, but it was weird. I remember my heart started beating, and I was like, "Am I lost?"
Yeah, and aliens too, right?
Exactly.
You know that this is the entrance to a sacred native river? Salish shamans would send their children to rap down the river when they turn 14.
You sure you want to come along?
Yeah. No, I'm sure. It's not a big deal.
You're okay with the drugs and everything, right?
I can handle my own.
What is it?
I have no idea what this place is.
This place gives me the creeps. Can you see them too? I've been watching us since last night.
We're on drugs, man. Whatever you think you're seeing is just in your head.
Anybody there?
Oh!
The aspirin's gonna help.
No!
So we were talking about your next script will probably be more like a horror film that might skew action, a little more action oriented.
I
Is it
think
different? Because your movies so far have been kind of low, like sort of a low key horror where it's more, small cast, like you said, and there's some extreme violence in especially Black Mountainside, but it's not action, So how is that different?
Well, so with this next film, yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit more violent. It's going to be a little bit more graphic.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think there's going to be people who are just going to be like, it's just not won't call it a horror film, but yeah, I would say it's going to be action. It's going to be action that skews horror probably. And if you want to describe it as something, I mean, a lot of people like Black Mountainside, people will describe it as like, oh, it's The Thing meets The Shining or whatever. And then people who watch, I've heard this one a few times with Archons, it's like, oh, it's kind of like Alien meets Deliverance or something.
Good films.
Yeah, no, I'm not complaining about that, but I think with this next one, I don't know if it's going to be so easy to draw, like, not to say like it's so unique, but like it's not going to be quite so easy to draw like, oh, it's this meets this. I think it's not weirder. It's certainly not weirder than Archons or Black Mountainside, but I think if people are attentive and they're fans of Black Mountainside, I think they'll see that, oh, this is by the same person. This is, a lot of similar themes, but it's definitely something different. I mean, you could say that Archons is very similar to Black Mountainside in a lot of ways. This next one it's a different direction. So
that's exciting.
Very exciting. Yeah, I can't wait for it. So when do you're in pre-production now and have an idea when you're going to start filming? And
so our tentative filming date is June 7th for that one. And then that'll be a 17-day shoot. And then I think we're going to try to do post-production pretty quickly. I mean, we're not going to have a lot of the red tape that we had with Archons or Black Mountainside. We had it was difficult with distribution and tax credits. I mean, in Canada, we have our tax credit system, which is very complicated. And it requires lawyers and accountants and paperwork and filing with the government and requirements with what kind of distributors you're allowed to use. Because in Canada, if you want to get tax credit money, you have to use a Canadian distributor, and there's only like 3 of them. So it's difficult. But with this next one, we've decided right from the get-go, we're going to self-distribute. We're not going to deal with tax credits. We're done with that. And that's just going to make it so much easier. Like once the film is done, we're going to put it out on, all the platforms you get your regular movies, VOD streaming, like your Amazons, your iTunes, your Voodoos.
Right.
So that's the plan with this one. That's kind of what I wanted to do with Archons, but I wasn't necessarily agreed with every step of the way there. And so, but this next one, yeah, I mean, everyone in the production's on board. It's going to be out pretty quickly once it's done.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's so hard to make a film and then get it distributed. I mean, it's hard to do. Like, like I said, I did a short film a couple of years ago, and it was incredibly difficult to actually get it made. And so kudos that you've made 2 films, and you're going to make a 3rd one, all features. Yeah. That's impressive. You're building your filmography. Hard to do all of that stuff, post, shooting it. It's all headaches all the way. And
people have no idea.
It's just fun to make movies. This is fun.
It's just it sounds fun. It is fun, but it's also a pain in the ass half the time.
I think I'll make a film later this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, a Black Mountainside was a lot of fun to make. I think everyone had fun. I mean, people I've talked to still say that it's the funnest movie they've ever made. Like the set was great.
That's good. That says a lot about you too.
Yeah. But then Archons was probably one of the most horrible films to make ever. No. So
working with water for some reason, I've always things that I've worked on, whenever you have something that happens in the water, I don't know what it is, but that's always a nightmare.
Was that a nightmare for you? Was water a problem?
Water was a massive problem with Archons. I mean, just like, because when you're shooting on water and we're actually going down rivers, we're on a boat with the camera. Yeah. And the actors are actually on boats they're canoeing. They're actually canoeing. So when you say cut, we like, let's do another take. You got to get all those boats back to the other end of the river. Right. So, and you can't just like canoe Like you can't just row a canoe up a river.
Right.
So you're pulling off to the edge, you're getting it off, you have a team hauling the canoe all the way back, every single take you want to do and every single angle you want to get. So I mean, originally in our shot list that we had before we went to shoot, we had a shot list of, we wanted to get like, it was like 24 shots a day, and we ended up getting something like 6 shots a day.
Oh God.
So we dropped a lot of shots from the shot list, and we a lot of times we're like, okay, this scene we wanted to have 6 shots. How can we do it in 1? Right.
Oh.
So
Wow.
yeah, it made it really difficult, and I get seasick. That made it difficult.
Oh,
I did
you
too.
you and me both. Yeah, forget it. You know.
So you're like, I have a great idea. I'm seasick. I'm going to make a movie on the water.
Yeah, that was a massive regret. And yeah, well, I mean, one of the other producers, he got sick like 2 days before shooting. I got sick day 1 of shooting. I had to go to the hospital twice
God.
during that movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a giant mess. I mean, we had like our AD assistant director, he dropped out on day 2. So I directed and AD'd on day 2,
Oh, God.
which was a lot while you're like also between going to the hospital.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, it was just a mess. Don't shoot on water. It's too much stress.
Horrible. And then you got your set dressers have to get out there and move the dead possum out of the shot. And
Yeah.
Well, plus you have to have that lake has to be like it's just 2 people on a boat, and it has to be still. You have to have this shimmering still river or lake, and of course, you know, there's another boat there and is making, you know, all kinds of ripples and stuff. I'm sure okay, we got to wait for the water to sort of calm down a little bit.
So
Yeah,
was
I
it
mean-
as remote as it looked, or were you able to leave and go stay in hotels or whatever at night, or did you have to camp out like you did in Black Mountainside?
So with Archons, we were far from like certain scenes. We were far. Like one, like so that river in the film, we actually shot it on 3 different rivers. So like the main rowing canoeing stuff where they're chatting and on their boats going down the river, that's all actually that's really remote. It was on an actual sacred native river that we had to get permission from a native tribe to shoot on.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was out there, and yeah, but we did put people up in hotels in Squamish for that one, but it was like an hour drive out there. We had to shuttle everyone out, shuttle everyone back. Because they're I mean, it was like a reserve, so you can't just go stay on the reserve. And then yeah, the other part of the river we shot on, again, it was a similar thing. It was actually a campground. So, but we couldn't like keep the crew on a campground because crews want hotel rooms, not campsites. So again, shuttling people back and forth with that one too. So that was tough. And then the last bit, we finally got the last bit of the river was on someone's private property in actually Surrey. So that one was a lot easier. People could just come from their homes.
Wow.
But
that's amazing.
Well, it's seamless. It doesn't look like you're all over the place. It looks like you're in one continuous location. I mean, along one river, stopping at one, you know, each campsite as you go. So it works.
Oh, I'm glad.
Have somebody shooting behind the scenes, like a Burden of Dreams kind of documentary about the film.
Yeah, I wish we would have actually. That was one thing we didn't do. We with Black Mountainside, we had a guy who was actually shooting behind the scenes everything. So we have lots of stuff to share. But with Archons, the budget was stretched so thin that we just didn't get a lot of that stuff. So
yeah.
Wow. Yeah. See, making movies not always fun.
Well, one thing we always like to ask directors and filmmakers and writers is we like to ask about the things that inspired you, like what films you saw when you were growing up. You said you started out when you were 13 or something. I think I started making films when I was about 13 or something like that. But I go back to the Super 8 days, you know, where we had to figure out ways to tell stories without sound because I didn't have sound on the camera. And the thing that when you go back to the origins of your interest in filmmaking, like storytelling, and what was it? What was the moment when you said, I want to do that?
Well, it could be one of 2 things. I mean, I saw The Evil Dead when I was really young, and I rewatched it again when I was probably like 12 or 13 years old. And I remember watching it and being like, I like this movie. Like, I liked it a lot. It was my favorite movie. But I was like, at the same time, like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I can do this. Like, this, like, no offense to the movie, but it's not like, you know, it's not Scorsese's Evil Dead.
Right.
So watching that and then just being like, this looks accessible. Like, it looks like something I could do. And that's like where my interest in horror came from too. I mean, I loved horror films as like an entertainment kind of, as you know, any teenager who likes horror films. But then another thing was like I said, I was writing comedies. I really wanted to make like comedy films. I was really into Judd Apatow at the time. And I remember I actually got a hold of one of his screenplays that he hadn't shot yet at the time, for Funny People. And this was like 2 years before they filmed it. And I remember like getting my hands on it and being like super excited. And I was like, I'm going to read like a movie that hasn't been made. And I'd never done that before. And I'd never gotten like a screenplay before it had been made before. And I remember reading it and again, being like, as I'm reading through it, it wasn't a perfect screen. I mean, it wasn't the greatest movie ever made, but it wasn't a perfect screenplay. And like, I remember reading the jokes and being like, these aren't jokes that I couldn't come up with. Like I wasn't blown away the same way like I would have been watching the film. And I remember, oh, so this is like a screenplay. This is like how it works. This is what it looks like. This is how it's written. I can do this. Like I'm looking at this blueprint in front of me and, you know, it's 110 pages or whatever. And I'm like, I've written stuff that's that long. So why can't I just do it in this format? Why can't I do this and package it like this? So after reading that, yeah, I wrote a couple comedy screenplays, kind of, you know, trying to be Judd Apatow or whatever. And then friends read them and they liked them and we just filmed them. But yeah, those were the main, like, those were the reasons that I got into like wanting to make films.
Yeah.
I love hearing that kind of stuff because everybody sort of has a different sort of origin, but also it all kind of is in a way kind of the same. Like you see it and you go, I want to do that. You know, and it's like, and I love how you said it seemed accessible because some films, like you said, like Scorsese, you look at that, you're like, I could never do that. But then when you see a film, you go, that makes me want to make a movie. I could do that. You know, I love that. I just think it's so inspiring.
Yeah, like you don't go see Avatar and you're like, hey, I could do this. I can just get my 3D camera and but I mean, you watch Evil Dead and you're like, this is a cabin. Like my buddy has a cabin. And like these actors, I don't know who these actors are. Like obviously, you know, Bruce Campbell now, but like, it's like those are just someone's buddies. And this is like my buddy's cabin. And like, what else is there? Fake blood? Okay, sure.
Yeah. And they get like a 2x4 and put a camera on it and ran through the woods for that
exactly
effect. You know, I mean, I love that. So it did seem like something any one of us could have done that.
Totally. You know, and then you dig a little deeper and you find the one he made before that, which is like Into the Woods, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then now you're watching like, hey, I've made stuff that's better than this. Like, right?
It's like, I can do this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really funny.
So Mark and I were in Army of Darkness, just so you know.
Really?
Yeah. We were extras in Army of Darkness, but I think Mark ended up in the film. I always tell this story that I was actually directed by Sam Raimi. The character that I was playing in the film was Angry Peasant.
Okay.
Potatoes, right? And I actually got personal direction from Sam Raimi, and you know what his direction was? He came up and he was like, "Can we move this guy into the back of the group?"
Great. Not selling it.
We need to get him out of the shot.
Well, I'll give you my, and Nick, I'll give you my, I was an extra in Judd Apatow's Knocked Up. So if you ever watch that again, in the fantasy baseball scene, you'll see me there as one of the baseball geeks. You know,
really?
During the draft. I'm to the right of Paul Rudd. You'll see me with a
love that.
baseball cap on or something and a Chicago Cubs shirt, I think. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So I spent a day, a friend of mine worked on the story for him and stuff. So I got to spend the day on the set. So that was really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to look at it.
Okay. You'll see.
You'll see him. He's in there.
My claim to fame.
Nice.
You watch Army of Darkness, don't look for me.
You will not see him. The camera goes so fast past the peasants that it shouldn't have mattered. You never even see them.
I could just say that one right there is me.
I don't know why you keep telling a story. You can say, I'm in it. Look for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm right there.
It's so true.
Nick, we really look forward to seeing your next film. And please keep us abreast of that. We'd love to have you back on and talk about that movie. Yeah. You know, so, but currently Black Mountainside and Archons are available on all streaming services, and please check them out. Cause if you're looking for really good, kind of a low budget, but really high end looking film that will make you think. And I'd love to talk about Archons off the mic about what happened, cause we have our theories.
Yeah.
But Nick Szostakiwskyj, is that Szostakiwskyj? right?
Yep, Szostakiwskyj then.
Okay, got it. Okay. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank
Cinemondo.
you so much. It's been great. We loved your movies.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for joining us. And I don't think I wouldn't even describe them as low budget films. I don't.
No,
the budget
They don't look like it.
There's not a.
I say it because it's impressive that it looks so good, and
Yeah.
obviously doing it for a lower money, because that's just hard to pull off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're nicely directed, beautifully shot. They're everything about them. There's not one of, you know how there's a thing in a lot of low budget films. There's the one thing that kind of blows it, you know. These don't have that. So
No, the effects were good. I mean, you would know you were out in the middle of nowhere. But yeah,
Great.
beautiful films and beautiful locations that are actually really scary. That's
great
what you look for.
casting
Yeah.
and very cool films.
Yeah.
Very impressed.
Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
And
right.
I guess we'll just get you to promise. You have to promise on camera that you'll come back and join.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love doing these things, so I'll
they're
definitely be
fun.
back.
Great.
They're just,
Thanks.
as long as you don't mind the screaming kids in the background.
I didn't even hear them.
I don't hear him.
In this day and age too, everyone kids and dogs in the background are just sort of normal now.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
exactly right.
All right.
Well, thanks again for joining us. This is Cinemondo signing off.